ABC, I'm just going around, just here.
We've spoken with...
Mark will be next, then Andrew, then. So.
We've spoken with homeless women about some of the stuff that your government's doing around housing, and they said that this is all well and good, these 5% programs, but they can't even put together 5% to put down deposit. And what they really need is emergency housing specifically for them fleeing domestic violence, and they need to be able to live with their teenage sons. What is your government going to do about this if you're re-elected? How are you going to increase that?
Well, the Housing Australia Future Fund had a portion of that housing was about emergency accommodation for women and children escaping domestic violence. That was something that we pointed out when the Greens and the Liberals and the Nationals in the Senate held it up for month after month after month after month. They held up that funding. That is just one element in addition to the work that Claire and Amanda Rishworth, another great South Australian Cabinet Minister who's not here, has done in getting agreement with increased funding for emergency funding for women and children escaping domestic violence as well. We know that there is more needed to be done. That's why we've attempted to put in place programs earlier to make sure that we address those issues on top of the additional community workers that we've put in place as well.
Yeah.
Mark.
Prime Minister, there'll be a lot of people this morning who don't qualify for this. They're not first home buyers, but they're looking at buying another home and saying, what does this mean for us, the majority of people in the housing market? What does this mean?
What it means is if you increase supply, you assist everyone because you have an impact on affordability. And so across the board, whether it's the Housing Australia Future Fund, the Social Housing Accelerator that we put in, the immediate funds that we're able to do, which what they did, there are now people who are living in homes that were left derelict, that basically weren't being fixed up. I remember under the former government here in South Australia going to homes that were unlivable here. They're now being fixed up because there's a specific fund there for them. So we're about Housing Australia Future Fund, looking after social housing, emergency housing, Help to Buy, helping people into home ownership through shared equity. Our Housing Australia funds as well, our infrastructure fund. Peter Dutton speaks about housing infrastructure to help electricity, water supply, those measures. We've announced 2 rounds of our program. It's being rolled out right now. That what that's doing is increasing private developers to be able to have that increase in housing supply. So across the board, we know that supply is the key. Only Labor is looking at supply as well as demand. Andrew.
Minister, the median house price in Sydney is an eye-watering $1.4 million. In Brisbane and Adelaide, where you used to be able to move for a cheaper house, it's close to $1 million. Do you want that median house price to drop? You say your policy's about supply. Do you want that median house price to drop?
Look, historically in Australia, you've been around a while, Andrew, prices tend to rise. What we want to do is to make sure that people have accessibility for home ownership. What we want to do is to take away the disincentive which is there where people just can't get a deposit. Now, when I bought my first home, you didn't need a 20% deposit. What's happened is a range of changes, particularly arising out of the GFC, that occurred to have that 20% deposit. And what we're doing in allowing for a 5% deposit with the government going guarantee is making sure that people don't have to wait. So it means they get into that home ownership earlier.
Huge then, aren't they?
They get
$1 million house.
No. Look, housing is an issue that has been growing as an issue for a long period of time. But I tell you what didn't help. The fact that the former government spent $5 billion over the entire time that they were in office. They didn't bother to have a housing minister. They saw housing as something that was other jurisdictions' responsibility. We are accepting our responsibility as a national government to show national leadership, working with state and territory governments, also working with the private sector. One of the other schemes that we have, of course, this is essentially and we thought about when we were going through the policy process, calling this build to buy rather than build to rent. Our build to rent scheme will help private developers by providing a tax incentive. We've worked through this issue with the Property Council of Australia. The master builders have all welcomed it to make a positive difference for private rentals to be built as well. And we're seeing that in my own electorate. I see it in a range of major sites, building medium density housing where it's appropriate, near transport links, and indeed I've opened a couple of those events in recent times, those new dwellings with people living in there, and with the support of my local council that actually supports increased density, unlike councils that are dominated by the Greens that talk about housing but never want anyone to build one.
Prime Minister, sorry to change tact a bit. Tanya Plibersek this morning said the pair of you were buddies. She said she didn't lean in for a kiss because she was worried about a cold. But separate to that, given you've stepped in a few times to supersede her on issues in her portfolio, like Tassie salmon farming, will you commit to keeping Ms Plibersek in the environment portfolio for the next 3 years, assuming you were re-elected?
You know what I'll commit to? Trying to win this election.
Assuming you do.
I don't assume, you might. I do not assume. Tanya Plibersek has been a friend of mine for a long period of time. We live in neighbouring seats. We're good mates, and she's doing a fantastic job. She's doing a fantastic job.
Prime Minister, under Labor's $10 billion plan to build 100,000 homes, there's $2 billion worth of grants to be matched collectively by states and territories. Yep. How will it be divvied up, for example, by population share? Are there any assurances that every jurisdiction is capable of forking out that cash? And Minister O'Neill suggested the homes would be means tested. What will be the income threshold?
Well, I'll answer the first to preempt, because they'll be part of Commonwealth state arrangements. Look, what I would like to see is every state and territory participate. But what we also want is a bit of competition between the states and territories as well. So if states step up and say, we've got this project ready to go, and South Australia has already got 10% and they end up with 20, I'll say, you ripper. Let's just get it done. Josh.
PM, your government's talked in the past about bidding for a COP climate conference. Peter Dutton said it would cost, I think, hundreds of billions of dollars. Could you give us any update on the bid, where it will be held, your thinking on that current issue?
Thanks very much, Josh. Yeah, Peter Dutton, one of the issues that's happening in this campaign, I think, is that Peter Dutton spent 3 years just saying anything and then he just moves on. I mean, it's a ridiculous statement. The fact is that holding a COP, a climate change conference internationally, produces revenue as well. It's an economic boost for wherever it's held. We do have the bid in. It will be determined at the climate change conference later this year if we are re-elected. If Peter Dutton is elected, you can see him copying policies from other jurisdictions and pulling out of Paris. We know a whole lot of their mob are still in climate denial. They've been equivocal about it. But we will put forward our bid to host a climate change conference, and I can't think of anywhere better than Adelaide to host that event. One of the things that's happened under Premier Malinauskas is Gather Round is just one example, but Wome Adelaide, the cycling, the range of activities that occur here and festivals, is he is putting Adelaide on the map as a global city, And one of the things that a climate change conference would do is showcase this beautiful city of Adelaide to the entire world. And when you look at the work that the Premier's doing in renewables, leading Australia as South Australia has for a long period of time, then I can't think of anywhere better than South Australia. A bit like the election, we're not getting ahead of ourselves. We haven't won the bid, but if the bid is successful, then my choice will be having it right here in Adelaide, and I might ask the Premier to make some comments and then we'll go through.
Well, Prime Minister, I am very grateful for that news indeed. Look, South Australia put our hand up to be a participant in the process that the Commonwealth initiated around potentially hosting COP. I think the nation hosting COP is an important opportunity for our country. Here in South Australia, we are exceptionally proud of the fact that basically 80% of all of the energy consumed in our state comes exclusively from renewables, and we are on track to be at 100% by the end of 2027 in terms of net renewable energy, which means that this place is better positioned to be able to host COP than anywhere else in the country. And over the course of the weekend, we saw tens of thousands of people come to South Australia and enjoy the hospitality that we have to offer. We have demonstrated that we are capable of hosting not just events, but massive events. And there is no bigger event on the planet outside of the Olympics than COP. So for us to be able to have the opportunity to host it here in South Australia is something that we are very excited about indeed. It is a major economic opportunity for our state. It gives us a chance to showcase, not just to the rest of the country, but to the rest of the world, that thoughtful transition around energy is actually an economic opportunity more than anything else. So we are very, very grateful for this news indeed. I think South Australians will be exceptionally excited about the prospect of hosting yet another major event in our calendar in the not too distant future, subject to, of course, the outcome of the federal election, where yet again now we see another point of difference, another representation of the importance of the choice that the people of South Australia have when they cast their ballot in a few weeks' time.
Thanks very much. Can I make one more point about that, which is that our bid is in partnership with the Pacific. It's a joint bid. It's one of the ways that we've repaired the relationship with the Pacific. Australia was in the naughty corner with a couple of other countries, only a couple, when it came to climate action and our response. And that is why it is so important. You know, every Pacific leader remembers what my opponent said about water lapping at their doors. And that is our credibility in the region is really important. And that's why this joint bid overwhelmingly has the support of the Pacific.
Prime Minister, we're nearing the halfway mark of this campaign. You're ahead again in the polls in Newspoll today. We're in a golfing state. We've seen Rory McIlroy struggle to hold a lead at the Masters this morning. How do you approach the second half of this campaign to make sure you don't blow that lead?
We have a mountain to climb. I've been in 10 election campaigns. We've won 3 out of 10, and one of those we won in minority. It is hard. No Prime Minister has been re-elected since John Howard, having served a term, since John Howard in 2004. It's more than 2 decades we've had a revolving door. 7 elections, 7 different Prime Ministers. I am certainly not getting ahead of myself. It's hard to win an election. If you look around the world, it has been a difficult time to be in government because of global inflation. But we'll work each and every day, and we'll continue to put forward positive, constructive policies that will make a difference and will ensure that people are better off. So this election is a real choice. It's a choice between Labor, building Australia's future, strengthening Medicare, having cost of living relief immediately, but also that long-term plans of responsible economic management, and Peter Dutton, who has a plan for $600 billion nuclear industry that no one in the private sector will touch with a barge pole, that taxpayers have to pay for, and there will be cuts. There'll be cuts to health and there'll be cuts to education, just like there were last time. Peter Dutton cuts, you pay.
Prime Minister,
yeah.
What specific savings have you identified to offset the $2.4 billion cost of the $1,000 tax deduction?
All our costs will be out there fully. We put our budget down just a couple of weeks ago. We, unlike the former government, have had savings, $95 billion of them. We've improved the budget bottom line by $207 billion.
Prime Minister, we're at a Housing Australia Future Fund site. At this point, how many new houses, not refurbished houses, have been built under the fund?
Well, the Housing Australia Future Fund has, as I said before, 28,000 is the figure that are either under construction, or this is not a HAF site, by the way. 28,000 under construction or in planning, so awaiting approvals.
But none yet.
I was asking for your opinion on the campaign. Donald Trump's tariff backflip last week seemed to seriously undermine market confidence in the United States. Is there a risk that unpredictability and bullying from the White House could permanently damage the US dollar? And does that undermine America's strategic position more broadly, as well as Australia's strategy of maintaining the status quo in the Pacific?
Well, we live in an era of strategic competition. I might ask my foreign minister to make some comments as well. We live in an era of strategic competition. The United States elected President Trump on a platform. We respect democratic processes. What we'll continue to do is engage constructively, not just with the United States, but importantly as well, engage in our region. One of the things we've done under this foreign minister, under our trade minister, Don Farrell, two great South Australians. South Australia does punch above its weight in our show, that's the truth. And we have improved relations, not just the obvious of restoring trade with our major trading partner in China. I mean, we've even got the pandas back here in Adelaide. We have exported now in excess of $20 billion. I sat down with the wine industry here in South Australia because they'd had a number of good years. They were pretty keen on getting wine back into China. Now it's going back in, premium wines, going back in at higher levels than they were beforehand. That's important. But we've also restored our relationship with ASEAN. Our relationship with the Pacific is really important. The COP bid is a part of that process as well. Our relationship with Indonesia has never been stronger. And of course, our relationship with India. India grew to be our fourth major export destination just in recent times. They're our fifth largest trading partner. We can build on that relationship even more. Latika.
Thank you, Prime Minister. One of those elections that you spoke about that Labor won was in 2007 when the Labor leader went to the election promising far less spending than the coalition at the time. In fact, less spending than one single policy you announced yesterday. Isn't it time too this year that this reckless spending has to stop?
What we're doing is putting out responsible policies. And that's why if you look at our $10 billion program that we announced yesterday, $2 billion of that is for grants matched, $8 billion is for loans and equity that will produce income back and then be able to be reinvested. That's the difference here between that and a one-off cash payment for 1 year that then just disappears, and then higher income taxes. That is what the alternative policy is, and a housing policy that doesn't do anything about supply. What we've done is very carefully calibrate the cost of living measures that we've put in place in a way that have continued to put downward pressure on inflation. Inflation had a 6 in front of it. It's now at 2.4. Interest rates started to climb before the last election. Now they've started to fall. That's because of our responsible economic management that we will continue to pursue.
PM, there's steel going into these buildings, there's concrete, there's workers. You're saying this is all about supply, but that supply means demand for so much. With so many homes going into the market, do you think there's an inflationary threat from trying to build so many homes all at once?
No, I don't, because we do need to house people, and if you don't have enough homes built, you're having an inflationary impact because of demand supply, the old economics 1A lesson. And so we think very clearly that our measures across the board, we stand for increased home ownership, we stand for increased private rentals, we stand for increased social housing, we stand for increased emergency housing. That's what Labor stands for. We have a comprehensive plan. And I've got to say, this minister here, who's a gun minister, who's developed this policy, come through the processes of all of these plans, went through our processes in the lead up to MyEFO began. We've gone through the range of options that we had to make sure that we got it right. And we pair all of that as well, importantly, with the labour supply issues as well. So labour supply. We have, of course, fee-free TAFE. Claire's spoken about the number of people. It's now 600,000 people have had free TAFE courses. Many of those, almost 10%, are in construction. In addition to that, what we did earlier this year was extend, and I announced this at the National Press Club. You know, that's the place I go and the other bloke doesn't. At the National Press Club, we announced the $10,000 of incentives for apprentices in construction, paid in 4 lots of $2,500 to make sure they complete their apprenticeship. I tell you what gives me a great deal of confidence. I was at I think it was a Monash TAFE in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and we were there looking at a prefab where they were working through the construction apprentices doing carpentry and joinery. And I've been to a similar place here in Adelaide, I've got to say as well, and seen that as well. And here in Adelaide, they also have a fantastic program of linking in with schools as well. So getting that qualification started while students are still at school. And I attended with the Premier's minister at an announcement there. But there I met a bloke, the cameras were there, you can look up your footage, you'll all have it, of a bloke who said, I said, what made you want to do carpentry? And this young man said, well, I've almost finished my degree, but I decided I wanted to work with my hands. And I said, oh, what degree are you doing? And he said, law. I'll finish this year. And I go, so you've spent 4 years doing a law degree? He goes, yeah, but I really want to make stuff. And this is what I want to do. And I figure my legal career will help me to navigate setting up a small business. And good on him. And I tell you what, my message to young people out there watching who are at school or watching this on delay is, tell you what, go into construction, do an apprenticeship, you'll have a great career, you'll have a great life, and I don't meet anyone who's gone down that road where we've matched up now. Everyone in construction, we previously done it in energy because of all the jobs that are there in new energy with the shift to the clean energy economy that's occurring. Everyone who does that, I've never met anyone who regretted it. Thanks very much.
Okay, that was the Prime Minister taking